Story 1. Popular guy went to MIT and shortly after got disowned by his parents for coming out as gay. He was popular for being smart, charismatic, and a genuinely good guy. He and his husband are doing well for themselves nowadays. Popular girl went to a prestigious university and became a nurse. Similar to the popular guy, she is a genuinely good person, so everyone still loved her. I've run into her several times over the years, and she's still the same nice person. She could model if she wanted to, but she really does care about folks, and considered it a personal mission to help others via healthcare. We had several self-proclaimed popular people in our high school who were self-absorbed a-holes. The three most notable is the guy who got kicked out of college when he tested positive for steroids and marijuana. He was also on a full-ride scholarship before getting kicked out. He never completed any higher education to this day and has fallen into addiction. A girl who was very attractive and also self-proclaimed popular became an escort and eventually married a wealthy client. Husband recently attempted to run for mayor of the city and lost big time. The second girl, who was also very attractive, became a model, got knocked up without knowing who the father was, got into an abusive relationship, ran away, got knocked up by another guy who left shortly after she gave birth, and finally she decided to get her crap together. Last I heard, she's finishing college to become a nurse, and she lives with her parents. Story 2. I lived in a town known for its oil refineries and chemical plants. Most of the popular kids I knew got hooked up right out of high school with good jobs at the plants and are now in high-level management positions making high six figures. Some of them went to college and are entrepreneurs for various things. Like one dude has his own fitness supplements, and another guy has a marketing consultancy. Nearly all of the popular girls left Houston and went to college in Dallas. I don't know what they went for. They are now all in real estate or are housewives, and the majority of them married much older men. Several of them have been grandmas since they were around 30. Story 3. This girl has been super popular since primary school. Really smart too. Was a straight A student, but also she got all the jock boyfriends. I don't know how popular she was in university, but she went overseas, came back with a law degree, and then started her line of couture handbags. She was really living the high life, appearing in fashion magazines, runways, VIP parties, brushing shoulders with royalties, etc. Suddenly, she vanished from social media for about a year. It turns out she went to a rehab, a very fancy one by the beach. Then she started posting weird things on her Facebook, things that don't make sense. Then turns out she has bipolar disorder. Now, she still lives with her mom. Story 4. One looks exactly the same and is a teacher married to a doctor. They have a huge house in the city and 4 kids. She was just a pretty, smart, socially capable but not aggressively popular girl with professional parents and became a similarly respectable adult. I'd like to feel bitter about it, but I can't. If I were a successful doctor who could have his pick of women, I'd marry her too. One became a teacher at our high school. He was funny and class president, and everyone legitimately liked him. I guess it's kind of strange he found his place where he was successful as a kid and just stayed there. But I think his genuine love for the place probably adds to his appeal to the kids. Story 5. In my high school, the popular kids were the ones who participated in theater and music and such, because it was just that kind of place. As such, the good-looking ultra-popular kids at my high school grew up to be popular good-looking music, film, and television stars. A couple are very well-known names in film. One is a popular stand-up comic and is on a popular TV show. Another is an incredibly popular DJ in Southeast Asia. A couple went on to be renowned orchestral performers. One of my best friends growing up has been a big name in local live theater for decades. So that kind of thing. Story 6. We had a very large school, and I was considered popular in the way that more people knew me than I knew them, and I looked really good. I'm currently working on losing weight because after a medical event, I got super into weed and snowballed into inactivity and weight gain. Because so much of my confidence hinged on my looks back in the day, I became a lot more introverted. My circle is a lot smaller now, and I've been domesticated from my wilder ways. I'm also a lot nicer after growing up a bit, almost detrimentally so. I didn't finish college because at the time, ADHD was just considered attention deficit. ADHD paralysis and other symptoms weren't known to be attributed to that, So, struggling with the independence of not having supervision and not knowing it was due to ADHD, I didn't know how to manage it and just thought it was a personality defect. So, I didn't do all my coursework. Turns out I'm pretty good at sales and have reached a fairly high level role as an individual contributor in software sales. I don't have an engineering brain. I just kind of follow the money. Story 7. A kid 2 grades older than me was a legitimate elite athlete. Tall, blonde, great leader, popular, insane physical ability. I played soccer with him, and even though he wasn't the most skilled, his 40-inch vertical, his speed, and 6'3" frame made up for a lot. He played basketball too, and excelled, but his real sport was baseball. I'm not familiar with his stats, but he was heavily scouted by the MLB. He ended up getting drafted straight out of high school and put in the farm system. Scouts were calling him a top 20 prospect in all of baseball. Then, when he was 19, he had sudden blindness and loss of sensation and went in immediately for brain surgery, where they found a cavernous malformation near his brainstem. He spent the next 2 years rehabbing, and I think actually made it back to some minor league games. But then the tumor reemerged, and he had to have another surgery. He retired from baseball at 22. He's had 20 plus brain surgeries in the past 13 years, and wears the scars of it. His right side is completely numb. He has double vision because one of his eyes is locked in place, and half of his face is frozen. Today, he's doing really well, all things considered. He coached baseball at our high school. He's an assistant coach in college, and he's actually a college student. He's married and had a kid a few years back. His story is surreal. Like the most promising kid got robbed for no reason, but still finds a way to persevere and inspire everyone. Story 8. Some of them crashed and burned after high school. I see them working odd jobs around town. Feels good. Most of the rest settled down and married what seems like very kind and loving partners and have very nice families. They all were absolute a-holes to me in high school, for no real reason other than the joys bullies get from bullying. So I've always wanted to just lay that out for their partners to see what they say. One of them is a coworker, and I'm sure I'll bring up how much of a butt her husband was at the wrong time. Bullying kids in a small town leaves you with really awkward relationships as an adult, when everyone still knows each other, and your kids play together and stuff. I love making it awkward. Story 9. Most of them are now wealthy and married, expecting kids. Then again, I lived in a small wealthy white town in Connecticut. It's surreal seeing some of these kids I remember now married and or having kids at 29 or 30, when I'm still working a job as a cook. I guess it pays to have rich parents who can network for you. I remember some of these kids getting expensive cars the second they got their driver's permits. Meanwhile, my dad just handed me the car keys to his crappy wagon and let me borrow it when he didn't need it. The thing with these movies where the popular kid gets his comeuppance and or is a loser years later hardly ever actually happens. 9 times out of 10, they go on to be successful because they have connections from their rich family. Story 10. My high school was so big, with many very low-income kids. I dropped out at the end of my freshman year. The coolest kids were in gangs, and we didn't hang out for a range of reasons, despite a shared appreciation for spliffs at the time. The valedictorian struggled to achieve as an adult. I remember being surprised pre-pandemic by how less successful many of the kids I went to middle and high school with ended up seeming as full-fledged mid-30s adults. I was amongst the very low-income set. I also ended up earning a master's from a fancy school and living in different parts of the country and world. There are so many ways to define success, and not hanging out with these people on a daily basis or even annually, it's hard to say. But I was surprised by how many of my peers were still living in our hometown, now a hip and expensive city, and by how many were hairdressers. I assumed many or most of the kids who were in the public school honors classes with me and who also did not drop out would have had more professional success, more traditional routes to achievement in that realm, probably more visible entrepreneurship. I'm in a moment of valuing togetherness with my family more than anything. Perhaps I was a late bloomer in this way. The only bum part of being a high school dropout is that you don't get to reunionize with anyone. Story 11. Split response from me. There were a flock of popular people I assumed had the best high school years in life. They always seemed incredibly happy and full of self-worth. Some continued to be successful and extremely happy, but quite a few I met years later mentioned how they wished they could have been more like the rest of us. In fact, one woman told me she always enjoyed art class with me, as I didn't give a crap about anyone, and she could relax for a class. My takeaway was that it's wonderful from the outside to be that kid everyone wants to be, but everyone still has the same self doubts as teenagers. Story 12. Kid literally could have been a model for a surfer magazine. He was wealthy, long blonde hair, blue eyes, all the girls wanted him, and there were rumors that he was related to Paris Hilton. He actually was a decent person for the time I knew him. Seemed like a nice kid, and I never saw him treat anyone badly. I was recently looking through the police blotter for my old city. If you haven't done this, it's a great pastime when bored. You find out that a lot of people you know get arrested, and saw a familiar face. I wasn't sure if it was him because the long hair was gone, and he now has face tats. He has a rap sheet a mile long, like 15 plus arrests ranging from burglary to assault and possession of meth. Looked him up on Facebook, and dude is apparently a Crip gang member, even though when I knew him, he was a suburban skater surfer kid. Meth is a hell of a drug. Story 13. My primary school GLUPK was the child, Austin, of the local car dealership guy, and he lived in the nicest house in the village. This was Ireland in the 80s, and having money then was like having a third tit. People noticed you, and you were treated as very, very special. He lived a very carefree life, where everything was available to him, and he was a bit naive about the world, but basically a nice, good, kind person. I think he got that from his trophy wife mom, who I remember being so tall, beautiful, kind, and softly spoken, like an Irish Marilyn Monroe. When he went to university, it was his first time away from his parents, with loads of money and no real sense of responsibilities or consequences. So he partied way too hard and too often. Dropped out of uni after a few short months. Went into rehab. His life spiraled pretty quickly into addiction and crises. Last I heard, he had developed some degenerative disease, and now he's immobile. It's easy to imagine that stereotype of the spoiled brat from a teen movie. But actually, I remember him being nice and sweet, and mostly not very entitled. I think he was a genuine victim of privilege, an example of what too much popularity and freedom without constraints does to people. Story 14. I went to a school where most of the good-looking and popular kids were also the smart kids, with the exception of a few athletes and cheerleaders. It's been some decades now. At my first class reunion, it was remarkable to see how none of the high school cliques mattered anymore. But now, it's mind-blowing to see that the ones from my class who are now rich as hell weren't popular or at the top of the class. I mean, the top folks from school became doctors or professors. But it's the other folks flying under the radar who now have mega money. Story 15. I grew up in a small Midwestern town where a lot of the good-looking, very popular people were also mostly straight-laced Christian kids who spent their free time doing activities with the local Youth for Christ organization, or at their local church. Most of them turned out okay, not exceptional, but fine. Stable jobs, marriage, kids if they wanted them. The most wealthy and influential family in town happened to be Mormon. Not a lot of those in our area, and they churned out popular, good-looking kids like it was their job. One was in my grade. Appears that she's doing well, has a career, and also 3 kids. Living the Mormon dream. One girl, who became a popular party girl before high school was even over, is living at home with a job her parents gave her, and an alcohol problem. Story 16. Hottest girl in my class ended up married to some dude she met in college. Now she is a housewife after getting a STEM degree. The dude got fat, and she runs marathons and runs for local school board elections. 2 of the popular kids who were already in their senior year got married, got great jobs. I saw them at her sister's wedding. They look the same as they did before, like they work out way too much and are stuck in keeping the same weight they had in high school. One girl I knew ended up marrying this super nerdy dude from a neighboring town. No idea how that happened. 3 guys went to jail. One is currently a fugitive, one was with the AB for a while, and one beat a girl almost to death. That same guy almost broke my jaw in middle school. But I am the reason he can't have kids, so we're even. The one who was in the AB reformed and became a super chill dude after lots of rehab and lots of therapy. One is in high finance, 2 are cops. But I own a house in a big city and work just outside of NYC and dated girls who had previously dated celebrities, so yeah, I feel like I won in life compared to them. Story 17. One of the more popular girls from my high school got arrested the summer before our senior year, so she came back to school late. What she was arrested for was wild. She went to get work done on her car in a neighboring town, and the mechanic smelled something in the trunk. He looked and found a dead body in a box. Turns out she had hid a pregnancy, and according to her, had a stillborn. She panicked and put the baby's body in a box to bury, but she just never did. The body was in the trunk for months. Her grandpa was a judge, so she got a pretty light sentence. For the record, I knew this girl, but we were not friends. She was never nasty to me, we just ran in different circles. I had spoken to her or been present around conversations with her about the baby, and I do believe the baby was stillborn. Most of the popular kids still live in our hometown or close to it. Story 18. I went to a private all-guy school in PA. So it was weird because you had some guys that were popular because they were smart, music geniuses, math and science geniuses, etc., or good at sports. Most of them are doing well for themselves. About 12 or so have died from drug overdose. Another 30 or so have really bad drug addiction. Anyway, the one who stands out the most to me was Greg. He joined the wrestling team with me our freshman year. Dude was a genetic freak, a natural athlete, made all states and everything. He could be a jerk, as all teenagers are, but he was always nice to me. Anyways, a year after we graduated, he died in a horrible car accident. Was driving his dad's truck and hit an off-ramp too fast. Some gas tanks in the back of the said truck got loose and caused the whole thing to flip. He died instantly. That was the last time I saw everyone from my high school at one time. We all lost our brother that day. Rip Greg. Story 19. I know folks here probably want the captain of the football team to be homeless narrative, but the reality is very different. If you're successful socially and competent, you will likely have a great future if you stay on target. Definitely a leg up over most smart but awkward types. Of course, there is a great deal of variation and people change, but still, the arguably best-looking most popular guy in my class did okay academically. However, 30 years later, he's an executive VP with a major New York City IB. Greenwich Country Club, second house in Kennebunkport. His female counterpart is a managing partner in the West Coast office of a big law firm. On a related note, many reasonably smart bullies learn how to kiss up and kick down. With a bit of charisma, they often go further than the victims they torture and damage for life. I know, not what we like to hear. On the latter, that's why it's important for the bullies to get the crap beat out of them multiple times. And I mean more than a bloody nose. It's the only way to get them in line. I've seen it work. Story 20. The most popular guy at my school started out being friends with a ton of people, but got more and more toxic as school went on. By the time we graduated, he was a real jerk who was too good for everybody else. I ran into him with some friends 2 years later while waiting tables. He had lost whatever scholarships he had, left school, and crawled back to our hometown. When he came by our table to take our order, he was suddenly everyone's best friend again. He had a ton of unsolicited excuses about working there and how he was taking a break from school or whatever. We were civil, left a decent tip, and didn't embarrass him or anything. That was 15 years ago, and last I heard, he's still waiting tables. Story 1. I knew a girl in high school who was very sweet, but also very shy. She had very poor eyesight, had some tough dental issues, was overweight, and lived with a foster family in a trailer park. She wasn't particularly close with anyone in school, so I got the sense that she was just trying to make it through. Head down, get it done. But she was always kind, and I would talk with her a bit here and there. Mostly she kept to herself and seemed to want to just not be noticed at all. After high school, we lost touch. 20 years later, I got a Facebook request from someone with her name, but the picture looks nothing like her, not even a vague resemblance. I accept, because I'm curious. Well, it was indeed her. It turns out that she worked her way through and paid for community college, ended up getting a good job with a family company, and worked her way up the ranks there. She saved all of her money. By her late 20s, she saved enough money and had good insurance for eye surgery and dental surgery. She also started really focusing on getting healthy. She said it all boosted her confidence so much that she started traveling around the country. During those travels, she ended up meeting a great guy. She and her husband have a nice family, good jobs, and live in an affluent community. She acknowledged that her early years were tough, and she had such low self-esteem that she had a tough time making friends. She thanked me for always being kind to her. She ended with, "I may have blossomed late, but it was worth the wait." I'm so happy for her. We keep in touch. Story 2. A girl I knew was a strict Christian and floated between groups of friends. Her judgmental side came out from time to time. Once, I remember her telling a girl she was going to burn in the depths of hell for having sex. I only know this because I was the lucky girl sitting between them when the other girl jumped over me to punch her. Anyway, after high school, I heard she met a guy, stopped being a Christian, and wrote all sorts of oversharing sexual statuses on Facebook. They got engaged and were hooked on drugs. She pawned her engagement ring for drugs and lived above a smoke shop out east. Good news, she's now off drugs, married, and has a daughter. Still posts over sexualized photos and statuses on Facebook. We're good seeing you in lingerie suggestively laying on your husband. Story 3. I had a wickedly smart and talented high school friend end up in as a last resort. Long story as to why it was a last resort. In a nutshell, at the time, she saw it as her only way out of a bad situation that had spiraled out of control very quickly. She finally managed to get out of and study to become a teacher, winning many awards throughout her years-long career. One summer, an a-hole parent came across her and decided it would be a good idea to send her videos to the local media and expose her past. Being a smallish town, word traveled fast. I believe it even made national news at one point. And the more conservative people in the community called for her to be fired. The school district succumbed to the pressure and let her go. Even though many other people did end up vocally supporting her after the news of her firing, she decided she'd had enough. She made the decision to leave the community and start over by focusing on her art and political causes that she was passionate about. Last I'd heard, she was doing well selling her art and teaching at a local university. Not sure if she disclosed her past to the university, and is a very active member within the local chapter of her political party. Never would have expected this road for her, but I'm glad she's doing well. Story 4. Not friends, but high school rivals/enemies. She was one of the worst students in any class. She did no work. She disrupted the class material by getting into stupid arguments in the middle of class with people she didn't like, going off topic, calling up people on her cell phone in class, and fighting with people. She would get up and walk out in the middle of class and had to have security called on her several times for attempting to fight students and teachers in class. To the point where she would just go, "Oh, don't bother, I'll go down to the security office myself," after picking a fight with somebody. She picked fights with teachers just as often as she picked fights with students. This is when she bothered to show up for class at all. She was also one of my biggest bullies, but at the same time, I did not put up with her crap. By high school, I'd been taught well to fight back against bullies. She openly used drugs, drank, and smoked, and she was very, very, very preoccupied with. By the end of the 10th grade, just about the entire student body, except for her little squad, who were as crappy as she was, hated her guts, and even the teachers would openly talk about how horrible this girl was. And, oh dear God, her. Which was honestly an a-hole move on the teacher's part, and did nothing to curb her aggression and a-hole behavior. What sucked is that she wasn't this way until high school. I knew her in 6th and 7th grade, and she was a very sweet girl, was in the school's advanced vocal ensemble and the band, got good grades, and was generally polite and well-mannered in class. 8th grade was when it all went to crap with this girl, and sometimes her nice personality still showed through. It was rare, but it was there. She also caught me reading a Diana Jones book and admitted she also loved those books, and wrote in my yearbook that she wanted to read all the cool-looking books she saw me reading. It was the nicest thing she ever said to me before she went back to insulting my intelligence and picking fights with me every damn time she saw my face. She disappeared unexpectedly at the end of 10th grade and did not return to school. In junior year, I overheard someone saying she had gone away to Virginia. After graduation, I spotted her at the food mart, and she actually smiled, waved at me, and said, "Hi, Nova." Because she was being nice, I said hi back and asked, "Where have you been? We haven't seen you since 10th grade. How are you?" It turns out she had dropped out of high school but had completed her GED during her absence, and was now headed for a college degree. All traces of that nasty, disruptive, bullyish girl were completely gone, and the last I heard of her, she'd gotten her degree and was going on to higher education. I was really proud of her. The 10th grade geometry teacher had called her a lost cause in front of the entire class. Well, I guess she wasn't such a lost cause after all. Story 5. Friend I'd known since freshman year of high school. Home life wasn't stellar. Abusive step-parent, control freak mom, etc. Joined the Marines to escape. Met someone, got married, had like 4 kids, and was expelled from service for medical reasons. Got divorced, dad got full custody, so she moved back home and bounced around in a traveler trailer with a younger boyfriend, who stole his boss's business credit card before they bounced to Lord knows where. Last time she surfaced, it was on Facebook, and she was selling their wedding rings he'd purchased using the stolen credit card. It's a real shame how things went. She'd done well in the Marines and even in the early years of her marriage. Not sure what the tipping point was. She was furious about losing custody, but she wanted to uproot 4 kids from their home, school, friends, and their dad's side of the family to bounce around in a 13-foot travel trailer living off of her $650 in disability. She absolutely refused to acknowledge how horrible that would have been for them. Story 6. Best friend in high school. His stepdad was a district attorney, and apparently they didn't get along at all. This was the Bible Belt Southeast. I met him in the 10th grade as I smoked weed, and he happened to sell it. He lived in a trailer park and financed it with weed sales. My parents hated him. After he graduated from high school while living 100% on his own, he did 2 years of college before getting accepted in a major medical university program that actually paid him to be there. He is now a pharmaceutical engineer living in Switzerland. My parents were surprised to hear that. Story 7. There were 2 that really stand out. One of them was a girl who got in a fair amount of trouble. She skipped school, had a bad attitude, and was more interested in hanging out with friends than actually learning. She ended up becoming a lawyer and eventually became the assistant DA of a city with about 3 million people. The other was a nice guy, got along with most everyone. I even considered him a friend and hung out with him on occasion. He came from a great family, and while he didn't get the best grades, he was good at things like fixing cars, so I assumed he would end up going into that field. Instead, he started a career in drinking. By the time he was 30, he had been in jail several times, in rehab a couple of times, had been arrested numerous times, had 2 restraining orders on him from former girlfriends, and had burned so many bridges with his family that they had given up on him. Now, in his mid-40s, he still lives in that same town. He looks like he's in his 60s, is on disability, and likely doesn't have much of a future as he continues to drink himself away. Story 8. Cheerleader who took a heck of a turn. She was an impressive drinker in high school. She kept it up through college. Got a job, did not love it. She joined Alcoholics Anonymous, met a guy, older, had nice finances, estranged from his ex-wife, kids, and no other family. They got married. A few months later, they're both drinking again. Within 2 years, he's dead. He left her everything. She is quote-unquote devastated. She goes back to AA, met another guy. Apparently, older men who are estranged from their families are super easy to find in AA. You got it, they're drinking, and the next thing you know, he's dead. Left her everything. Now she's gone back to AA again. She has met the most wonderful man. It's a shame his kids won't speak to him and won't come to the wedding. It's next month. Story 9. The most brilliant girl I knew, second in our graduating high school, was also one of the most lively and outgoing people I knew. She could befriend anyone. She was so fun and energetic and thoroughly enjoyed living life. I thought she was destined for so much success. She ended up passing away last year, just a couple of months shy of her 24th birthday after a lengthy and private battle with cancer. When I found out about her illness, it was already terminal. And when she passed away, all I could think about was how unfair it was that someone with so much potential, someone who did everything right in life, could die like that. Her death really got to me, and as the 1-year anniversary is approaching, I constantly remind myself to make the most of every second of my life, because hers was cut so short. Story 10. A lot of them. I don't know if there was something in the water in our town or what. A lovely girl in my class had severe anorexia, to the extent that she had to repeat the year. She was strikingly pretty, with the face of an angel. Always wondered if she felt self-conscious and grew obsessed about her looks because it was what people valued. Nobody made the same fuss about her good grades or niceness. She is now morbidly obese, couch surfing, and pretty much always wears the same big brown coat and tracksuit pants. Was shocked to see her go from one extreme to the other. Still really nice though. I hope it works out for her. Another high achiever in our class is now a traveling musician and nudist. She dropped out of engineering and just travels from festival to festival as a concert goer, dressed as a barefoot rainbow fairy. Self-funds by offering tarot readings, spells, and palmistry. Lived by the creek for a while. Has a Pomeranian. Story 11. She was voted most likely to succeed in our year. Had plans on being a doctor, really smart. Ended up staying in state for college. Pretty rural, not many options. We lost touch. She got married. She's a stay-at-home mom and a trophy wife, basically traveling the world on her doctor husband's dime. Not a bad life, certainly, but also not expected. Story 12. The happy surprise? One of the girls I went to school with kind of came from the wrong side of the tracks. Nice kid, but her family was known to be pretty trashy, and she dropped out of community college to be a stripper. A few years later, she got her stuff together, and now she's a corporate lawyer. The not-so-happy surprise? Dude was brilliant. He came from a wealthy family. He was good at sports. He was a hilarious person to be around. Even at the time, it was no secret that he had his demons. But he was just so damn smart that it seemed like if he could grow out of his adolescent angst, everything would be fine. Again, wealthy family, bright, good-looking. Bro didn't exactly have to hit a home run to do okay in life. I believe he's working part-time at the grocery store now, but he may have gotten fired again. Or he might be back on disability. Or maybe he's working at Pizza Hut. It's always hard to keep it straight, because he doesn't tend to hold down any particular job for long. Honestly, if he weren't such a nice person, there might be a hint of schadenfreude there. But as it is, it's just tragic. He really was brilliant, and he really was a wonderful human being. But there weren't enough advantages in the world to save him from himself. Story 13. Low achiever. Used to goof off in class all the time. Bit of a class clown. Used to tell everyone that her goal was to be a trophy wife so she could watch TV all day. Has shown her designs at Paris Fashion Week and has dressed several celebrities. You could have knocked me over with a feather when I was flicking through a copy of Vogue Australia on my lunch break, and there was a 4-page article on her in there. I was so happy. She always had a heart of gold, and I feel like her teen self was a reflection of what her family thought for her. She deserved to be so much more than someone's wife. Story 14. I would probably be a good post about this, but since this isn't about myself, here we go. A girl who was in the top 10 of my graduating class. Had plans to become a lawyer, and probably would have succeeded, seeing as how her mock trial team won state. Went to college and learned she'd enjoyed the arts much more. Briefly became an actress, but failed. Moved back home with her parents and started her own photography business, but failed. Now, she is a very successful burlesque dancer. While she has failed in many of her endeavors, I always admire her will to find something new to try. And the kid in our class who some of us were sure would become a mass murderer is now the fire chief of the local fire department. Story 15. One of my best friends was Arab, but didn't give in to her parents' traditional ways. She would tell her mom that she was going to backpack through Europe when she turned 18, that she wanted to be a police officer, and refused to wear a hijab, although her parents kept on telling her to. Of course, her parents disapproved of all of this and told her hell no to traveling or becoming a police officer. 2 years after high school, she became very religious and married some guy in his late 30s, and already has 2 kids, and only hangs out and talks to people in her Muslim community circle. I don't really talk to her anymore because I'm a guy, and her husband disapproves of it, although I'm gay. She also told me she doesn't support me being gay because it's wrong, although throughout high school she was very supportive and was there for me when I came out to my parents, and they didn't take it well. I don't know what caused her to turn 180 and fall in line with her parents' wishes, but I do miss who she used to be. Story 16. I had this one friend, the most mature of all of us. She helped her family a lot, and that helped her mature because of a lot of younger siblings and 2 good-for-nothing brothers. She always insisted, right up to senior year, that she didn't need to know exactly what she wanted to do with her life because she didn't want to pick when she was young and foolish. She went to college, which was good. Then she got into an abusive relationship before going back home. She works 2 jobs, and the little free time she has is spent coaching her younger brother's sports team. We never realized her family basically was her identity. She has no interests beyond baking, for her family and sports team events, and anime, which she enjoys with her sisters. It sucks. They're all wonderful people, but it sucks. Don't think she even likes coaching, but her mother made her do it. She was so smart and mature, we figured she'd get an office job. Story 17. Wasn't really a high school friend, but more like a babysitter's high school friend. When I was in primary school, my babysitter and her cousin Madeline would hang out together while taking care of me. Madeline was everything you could have wanted out of a high schooler. She was pretty, athletic, and most of all, she was extremely intelligent. Got all sorts of awards and praises in her 8th grade graduation. Once high school came around the corner, we had the biggest hope for her. She planned on doing this program that would allow you to graduate your sophomore year. It was incredibly difficult, and you'd have to take junior and senior classes early on. We all believed in her wholeheartedly, and in short, she failed miserably. Instead of studying, she slept around and smoked weed, did drugs, and failed the test to graduate early. She got pregnant junior year by a married man, ended up miscarrying, fell into alcohol, and is currently unemployed living under her mother's care. All of this happened before I could even start high school, a year ago. Story 18. Had a friend who lived near me. Both of us went to parochial schools, which does not make a person good by itself, trust me, and had solid home lives. He was a little more tense, but nothing abnormal. He was really close to his dad and brother, and we were really close friends. All through middle school and the first half of high school, he was like a brother to us in our group of friends. Then he started to make a dumb decision here and there, but nothing too huge. Once we graduated, hit the fan. He got really into drugs, started with pot first, then shrooms, cocaine, LSD, and all combined with large amounts of hard liquor. He got in trouble with the law and dropped out of college. Thing is, he was very bright and a talented individual with an absolute heart of gold. But there were issues he had been dealing with that he kept hidden underneath a happy facade. Any one of us would have dropped everything to make sure he was okay, but none of us knew how much he needed help. I've always been a great judge of character, and can just sense what people are thinking and feeling from just talking with them. These guys taught me just how masterfully people can hide beneath a smile and a laugh, taught me to be aware of the small signs. The only benefit to this lesson is that I now know what to look for with students who may need help. People can be so skilled at concealment of their feelings and needs. You have to look for the small things and reach out. Maybe you won't fix it, but it will help for them to know you care and you're there for them.